Welcome to Wesley Impact. Later on, I want to talk about the call of Jesus to love. We look at the importance of community and mentoring through Wesley Mission's Aunties and Uncles programme. And with Mother's Day fast approaching, we highlight the life and work of a lady that became known as Mama Jude. At 56 and towards the end of a successful nursing and administrative career, Judy Steele found herself trapped in the big wet in the middle of Aussie outback. Unable to communicate with the outside world, she felt somehow that God challenged her to see her life and her upcoming retirement years in a very different way. What followed was an extraordinary journey of resilience and renewal in the face of poverty and death in Africa. Judy, it's a delight to have you on the show.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be here.
You and your husband, you're en route to see your family in your four-wheeled drive and got the biggest surprise ever when it rained.
Yes.
And it rained Aussie style.
Well, it wasn't supposed to. But what we found out is that God sometimes takes you out of your comfort zone if you're not listening to him. And that's what happened.
And it rained and you felt trapped, but it was a kind of turning experience for you.
Oh, yes, yes. At the end of the first day, we were marooned, and we knew that we were going to have to be rescued eventually, but we were outside of all sorts of zones. We had no radio, no phone, nothing. We couldn't even use the radio in the car, and we sat there for 5 days. At the end of that time, I said to my husband, you know, I think I've had a very good life. It's probably time to give something back. And he said, well, what are you talking about? I said, well, I've actually got to tell you something. I've got this picture in my head, and I'm somewhere in Africa or India, probably Africa, and I have a black baby in my arms and I'm surrounded by black children. And he said, you better go home and talk to our minister. And a lot of things moved on from there. I know that you talk about a minister being so important to you, and in some of that discerning, don't you? Well, yes. Gillis Ambler was our minister at Westbourne Park, where we lived at that time, and I went to him. I think I was a bit of a challenge, but together we went on a beautiful journey, a really spiritual journey, and he became my best friend and my spiritual guide.
Like a spiritual director, almost, in that sense.
Yes.
And you took crash courses in various things to bring you up to speed, and international health and medicine.
Yeah.
Not really certain about where it might lead.
Oh, no. I knew. I mean, I was 56 or 57. I wasn't a spring chicken. I didn't have time to go to Bible college, study a language. Somehow or other, God just got under my skin, and I had to obey. It was that simple. I was obedient.
And initially, you were terrified at the thought of doing something like this. But you talk about meeting somebody. You know, people might call it a chance meeting, but we know a bit more than that if we're Christian people. Call Edward. Tell us a bit about...
Well, I finished up in Uganda 6 months later. And God had a hand in that. You know, I went and lived with people from South Australia who'd just gone to Africa, to Uganda. I was able to live with them. They knew of a clinic in the slums where I could work. And while I was there, Dr. Edward Simbatia, who's now my brother, came over, and together we just, he taught me about Uganda and Ugandan drug laws and all those sorts of things, and we just worked together. It was quite amazing that, you know, 14 years later, he's named one of his kids after me, you know. We're very close.
So far from being the looking for a retirement stage when you might just track down a little bit, this became almost the busiest and most exciting time in your life.
I have to say, for my husband Alan and me, we would agree it's been the best part of our lives. I mean, we've been married 48 years, and, you know, this was both of us got called here, not just me, and a lot of people are interested, perhaps older people, when I say that, because I got called to go. He got called to let me go and pay the fare.
Before we move on and hear more about that story, I'd like to introduce our musical guest for the show. John Newsom is a music teacher and a worship leader in Newcastle. His song choice, Rescue, fits well with Judy's story. It's been inspired by his work with Compassion, an organisation that helps to release children from poverty in the name of Christ.
Twinkle, little star, how I wonder what you are, what a child could be, such destiny, that heaven's far away. I've seen your eyes and wonder what they'd say. Your shelter gone, a stolen song. If I could pick you up, I'd carry you on high, show you the diamond that is your life. I'll come to your rescue. I'll come to your rescue. How could I let you go? How could I let you go? Words are locked away. Hope is precious who speaks your praise, embracing you, breaking through ancient miseries and things that should never ever be. Yet now I know I am responsible for the need to care and do what is right, to change the world in one child's life. I'll come to your rescue. I'll come to your rescue. How could I let you go? How could I let you go? Little child, I will never be indifferent. It's time that you were free to be a child who sings, as every child should sing. I am resolute, I'll do all I can. How could I let you go? How could I let you go? I'll come to your rescue. I'll come to your rescue. How could I let you go? How could I let you go? I'll come to your rescue. I'll come to your rescue. How could I let you go? How could I let you go? Little child, I will never be indifferent. It's time that you are free to be a child who sings, as every child should sing. Twinkle, little star, how I wonder what you are, what a child could be, such destiny.
To commemorate 200 years of faith and pioneering care in Australia, Wesley Mission has released a publication documenting its work in the community.
Everyone needs a little rest. Everyone needs a little joy.
For more information on today's people, today's story, you can contact us on 02 9263 5555 or email us at impacttv@wesleymission.org.au.
And so don't forget, if you want to know more about John's music and his latest album, Falling Awake, details are on our website this week. We're back with our health advocate, Judy Steele. Now, since your first trip in 1999, you've been back 9 times to Uganda, so you're pretty familiar with it now.
Yes, over 14 years. I've been back 9 times. Of course, they'd love it if Alan and I would just go and live out there, but I said, no, I have family here.
Now, in 2001, you were dejected and worn out, but God then opened a door through some Australian healthcare connections. Tell us something about that shipping of the first supplies.
Yes, well, I used to work for Rest Haven in Adelaide, a very large organisation for healthcare, aged care, and they knocked on my door and said, look, we've got some beds. We thought you might want them for Uganda, and I thought, oh God, what are you doing now? And then we thought we better go and have a look at them. Oh, well, it was just one of God's, funny little surprises. My church said, well, we'll get a 13, 12-foot container. Wasn't big enough. We filled it in 2 weeks. We had to get a 40-footer. And the first container was 20 foot, that's right, and we had to get a 40-footer. And then we had nowhere to store everything, and God just opened doors. We had a warehouse. And we were just overflowing with the Repat Hospital in Adelaide, Flinders, Memorial, aged care facilities. It was just amazing.
Everybody wanted to help, and Uganda Australian Christian Outreach was born. And your works helped to fund primary health care, a youth club, a widows group, a small loan scheme, adult literacy work. Now, you're not going to do this forever.
No.
So what do you see beyond your own work?
Edward said to me that what we needed was an operating theatre because we'd built the hospital. I helped him to finish building that with money that I had received. And so he had a really old 8-bed facility. He was building a 30-bed when I found him, but he'd run out of money. So we built that, and then I turned my shipping container into my primary health clinic for free medical care for the poorest of the poor and so forth. But he said, look, if you can help me build a theatre, I'll give you 40% of the profits, and that will run UACO, and they'll become self-sufficient. And so when my book was published, I said, well, you can have the royalties. Not that that was going to build the theatre, but it was a start. And we just went from there. We've been building it now for 2 years, and we're very close to being finished. The only thing, like everything these days, we need a few more dollars, but we'll get there. By God's grace, we'll get there.
Just tell me, just briefly, what this has taught you about your own faith and trust.
Well, first of all, what it's taught me is that God is ever faithful. He answers all your prayers. Even when you think that He's not answering them, He does. I have found the most spiritual experiences in Uganda that have left me in tears. And that's like going to church and having to get there 20 minutes early so you can get a seat. But I've got that down to a fine art now. But that they love God and Jesus with a passion. It's beautiful.
And really, you were given an award in Australian honour,
Yeah.
and you really, like most honourable people in that situation, you say, this belongs to other people too.
Well, I received the officer in the Australian Honours. I still smile when I think about that, but it's wonderful. But I'd like my husband to have one, and all the people that helped me, that worked so hard. We've driven miles collecting equipment and all those things. Yeah.
Lovely story, Judy, that you've shared with us. To those that you've worked with, that Mama Judy, that sense of belonging. A big journey from a big wet in the middle of Australia.
Yeah.
God bless you, and may the work you've done continue to prosper. We'll be back right after this short message.
It's been 200 years since the first Methodists met in Australia. To celebrate 2 centuries of faith and pioneering care, CEO and presenter Reverend Dr. Keith Garner takes us back to where it all began.
But we don't begin here at the heart of London. We begin in a town in the north of England.
In this fascinating narrative, Reverend Garner chronicles the history of the life and times of the founder of Methodism, John Wesley. This fresh and thought-provoking documentary takes us on a journey throughout the United Kingdom, beginning in John Wesley's hometown of Epworth.
John Wesley was born here on the 17th of June, 1703.
This 1-hour DVD travels onto his education years and beginnings of social justice in Oxford, to his final years in London. For more information on John Wesley, the man and his mission, call 02 9263 5555 or email us at impacttv@wesleymission.org.au.
It's true to say that Judy used her experiences in life to mentor others, which grew to help a wider community. At Wesley Mission, we also value the importance of mentoring through our Aunties and Uncles programme. We're always looking for new mentors, and this next story is a celebration of how our work began.
Well, before Wesley Mission came along as our fairy godmother, we were in dire straits. Aunties and Uncles would have closed after nearly 40 years, and probably about 5,000 children have gone through the program. So, and it's a great program because it keeps the children in the family.
I've got family, but hadn't spoken to them for 20 years, and the girls needed family, and also my mum passed away only recently 4 years ago, so I needed something more for the kids. So yeah, so I sort of like Googled them on the internet and off I went. I mean, our world now is totally different. I mean, we're reattached also with my family, so we've just got this massive family base now, which is really good, and they're beautiful people, we love them. I mean, they look forward to every visit, you know, and I mean, I suppose it gives us a break as well, and they get to enjoy different things, and I wouldn't have life any other way now. It's beautiful.
They're just great fun to be with. They're full of activity all the time. They're on the go all the time. And we really have fun.
When I first joined Aunties and Uncles, I wasn't even sure whether I'd be accepted because I was an older person and I was single, and you know, it was all about families, but I really don't think that matters. This has been an added dimension to my life, definitely. A lot of joy, absolute lot of joy. Yes. She's the niece that I don't have.
She means a lot. She's absolutely wonderful. We've been so many places and I've learned so much from her. Yeah, it does give you a lot of self-esteem and confidence knowing that you have got someone there, and it's also another sort of moral support branch that you've got there. So, you know, in case your mum or your dad isn't there, I'm really happy that the Wesley Mission did take over it, because it's giving the opportunity to other young people and all the children and that to have another person there for them and to make them feel really special.
I'm in John 13, verses 31 through 35. Now, if a group of people who had no knowledge or previous Christian commitment were asked, what is the heart of Christianity? Then I'd be very surprised if there was no mention of loving one another. Many people, even who have nothing to do with the Christian faith, would say, well, it's about loving one another, isn't it? Let me put that thought into its biblical context in John's Gospel. Here's the scene. The upper room. Judas has left to betray Jesus. That's quite clear from what we read in verse 30. As soon as Jesus had taken the bread, he went out. It was night. And it was night are very important words, I think, in John's drama. Then we're told Jesus talks about being glorified in this setting. When he was gone, Jesus said, now is the Son of Man glorified, and God is glorified in him. Now, this is one of the great Johannine themes, the glorification of Jesus. If God is glorified in him, God will glorify the Son in himself and will glorify him at once. Now, we can get very, very chewed up and feel that these are words and ideas that are beyond where we are. But the glory of Jesus is seen in his suffering, death, and resurrection. Now, these remarkable verses, putting it into that context, verses 34 and 35. A new command I give you, love one another. As I have loved you, so you must love one another. By this, everyone will know that you are my disciples, if you love one another. Now, what's new about this? It's just the oldest time, we might say to ourselves. Well, yes and no. The Old Testament certainly had taught that love is a duty. But Jesus sees it as something far more. The trouble is that we often use the word command or commandment as an authority thing. Well, it's about allegiance as well. And there's no doubt at all that what Jesus sees here is love is a quality that is seen in people's lives. That if we love God, so that love should flow into a love for one another. And it's what Jesus Christ came to do for all of us. Jesus sets a lofty and almost impossible standard. I say almost because he wouldn't ask us to do something that wasn't through his grace possible, but it's certainly way beyond many of our expectations to love each other. I mean, that's the hardest thing in all the world to do in some ways. Of course, you'll say to me, yes, well, of course we love one another, but there are times when it's difficult to do that. And what we find here when we read these words is really the sense that this is actually the deciding factor for many people who observe the way that we live. As Judy shares her story, it's inspired by love, it's driven by love, and it's set forth and before people in love. And Jesus will demonstrate this love in his own death and resurrection. So when Jesus calls us to the way of love, it's a way of love that we've seen in him. It's a way of love that very soon, when the pages of John's Gospel turn, not just in terms of a reading, but in terms of the incidents, the action in John's Gospel, we'll see that that love is demonstrated supremely in the cross, which is seen as his self-giving for all the world. That sacrifice, that love, and that journey that makes sense of all of life. And when it comes to the very end of John's Gospel, when he's reinstating Peter, the apostle, when he's calling Peter to follow him after he'd known what it was to deny him, there we find in those moments, Jesus says, love, take care of my sheep. And that love is a real sense of what it means for us to be engaging in mission today. So whether it's in Uganda or whether it's across Australia or anywhere else that you're sharing with us in the show today, I can be certain that the call to discipleship, the call to follow, is bound up in this wonderful commandment of Jesus to love one another. Yes, it's demanding. Yes, it calls for everything we have and everything we are to be given to him. But it's also the most fulfilling life of discipleship. We've listened to a person who has given that very, very significant part of her life, the best part of 15 years in service in another part of the world. But it's because of love. And love is deeply satisfying when it's lived out in the grace of our Lord Jesus Christ. May God bless us in such a way that we'll not only receive his love, but feel drawn by that love to love other people. And as we're drawn by that love to love other people, we'll be drawn to go, to be, and to serve. May God bless you with the touch of his love. And remember, when you ask for God to lead you, you never know where it's going to be.
If you would like to know more about today's topic or for more on Keith's message, contact Keith by writing to Wesley Mission, Post Office Box A5555, Sydney South 1235, or email impacttv@wesleymission.org.au.
Thanks for joining us once again. It's been 14 years since Judy stepped off the plane in what she thought was going to be a single visit to Africa. And in all those years in clinical nursing field, she's really known what it is to go through challenges and fears and doubts, but she put her best foot forward and she trusted God. We're going to leave you with Levi McGrath as he shares one of his own life-changing moments with a beggar on the streets of, you guessed it, Uganda. It's called Christopher's Song. Until next week, goodbye and God bless you.
Was a man with scars on his hands, holding him out to the world. There every day by the roadside he lay, just sitting down in the dirt. Oh, dust covered not much to see. Says he believes and he prays, oh, asking for change, but things stay the same for him. Holds out his hands anyway. He says, don't walk by this, don't walk by this, don't walk by this time, don't walk by this time. On went the days and I learned to look away. I turned my eyes to the ground, not looking back. I couldn't shake the fact that I felt like I let somebody down. Oh, what would I do? And what could I say?